Section 19A, What the Buddha Taught in the World Today. Erroneous views. There are some who believe that Buddhism is so lofty and sublime a system that it cannot be practiced by ordinary men and women in this workaday world of ours, and that one has to retire from it to a monastery or to some quiet place if one desires to be a true Buddhist. This is an unfortunate misunderstanding, clearly stemming from a lack of understanding of the Buddha's teachings. People run to such hasty and wrong conclusions as a result of their hearing or reading casually something about Buddhism written by someone who, as he has not understood the subject in all its aspects, gives only a partial and lopsided view of it. The Buddha's teaching is meant not only for monks in monasteries, but also for ordinary men and women living at home with their families. The Noble Eightfold Path, which is the Buddhist way of life, is meant of all without distinction of any kind. The vast majority of people in the world cannot turn monk or retire into caves or forests. However noble and pure Buddhism may be, it would be useless to the masses of mankind if they could not follow it in their daily life in the world of today. But if you understand the spirit of Buddhism correctly, and not only its letter, you can surely follow and practice it while living the life of an ordinary man. There may be some who find it easier and more convenient to accept Buddhism if they do live in a remote place, cut off from the society of others. Others may find that kind of retirement dulls and depresses their whole being, both physically and mentally, and that it may not therefore be conducive to the development of their spiritual and intellectual life. True renunciation does not mean running away physically from the world. Sariputta, the chief disciple of the Buddha, said that one man might live in a forest devoting himself to ascetic practices, but might be full of impure thoughts and defilements. Another might live in a village or a town, practicing no ascetic discipline, but his mind might be pure and free from defilements. Of these two, said Sariputta, the one who lives a pure life in the village or town is definitely far superior to and greater than the one who lives in the forest. The common belief that to follow the Buddha's teaching one has to retire from life is a misconception. It is really an unconscious defense against practicing it. There are numerous references in Buddhist literature to men and women living ordinary, normal family lives who successfully practiced what the Buddha taught and realized nirvana. Vacchagotta, the wanderer, once asked the Buddha straightforwardly whether there were laymen and women leading the family life who followed his teaching successfully and attained to high spiritual states. The Buddha categorically stated that there were not one or two, not 100 or 200 or 500, but many more laymen and women leading the family life who followed his teaching successfully and attained to high spiritual states. It may be agreeable for certain people to live a retired life in a quiet place away from noise and disturbance, but it is certainly more praiseworthy and courageous to practice Buddhism, living among your fellow beings, helping them and being of service to them. It may perhaps be useful in some cases for a man to live in retirement for a time in order to improve his mind and character. It may perhaps be useful in some cases for a man to live in retirement for a time in order to improve his mind and character as preliminary moral, spiritual and intellectual training to be strong enough to come out later and help others. But if a man lives all his life in solitude, thinking only of his own happiness and salvation without caring for his fellows, this surely is not in keeping with the Buddha's teaching, which is based on love, compassion, and service to others. One might now ask, if a man can follow Buddhism while living the life of an ordinary layman, why was the Sangha, the order of monks, established by the Buddha? The order provides opportunity for those who are willing to devote their lives not only to their own spiritual and intellectual development, but also to the service of others. An ordinary layman with a family cannot be expected to devote his whole life to the service of others, whereas a monk who has no family responsibilities or any other worldly ties is in position to devote his whole life for the good of the many, for the happiness of the many, according to the Buddha's advice. That is how, in the course of history, the Buddhist monastery became not only a spiritual center, but also a center of learning and culture.